who was the toughest guy you'd ever been in the ring with, in a sense that, like, you were giving him some of your best work and it just didn't seem to phase him?
Well, the toughest guy, I mean, Phil was tough, but the other thing with Phil was I'd blown out my left knee. Like ACL, MCL, PCL, I was in an electric wheelchair up until a week and a half before the match.
Right.
And so I could literally barely move. But he was a built-in perfect bad guy. Like literally East Coast, West Coast, like all anti-everything I was. And then he performed. I mean, he hit hard, he fought hard. Still, to this day, the hardest man I have ever punched, more than once. Like I smoked him like 3 times with all of my power from knuckle to toe, and I was like, there's no way this guy can still be standing. And he was still standing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I'm here with the King of Connecticut. We're here in Las Vegas, Nevada for CatchCon tournament, and you got a big of announcement for us, King. What you got here?
Hollywood, I have a huge announcement to make. Shoot Pro Wrestling has a new chairman. Our new chairman is the one and only, the legend, Frank Shamrock. Frank, welcome to Shoot Pro Wrestling.
Thanks for having me here, guys.
Frank. Yeah, brother. Good to have you on, man. Legend in the business. Been around for many years. You've seen a lot. You've done a lot. Like I said, you're now the chairman for Shoot Pro, huh?
Yeah, I am. I'm the big cheese. And I kicked her old chairs as well.
We're going to have to get Frank a golden chair. A nice gold plated chair.
I'm on with wheels on it. It would wheel me in.
Yes.
To make my presence really strong.
So Frank, give us, for audiences that may not recognize you or may not recognize your name, because you got a lot of people now that are just discovering MMA. So they don't remember the earlier years, the golden years, I like to call them. When did you get into the business? What was really your time period when you started hammering in on this?
Well, I turned pro. My first professional fight was December 18th of 1994. And I debuted in somewhere in Japan. I can't remember.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because the Pancras organization in Japan that you came out of, I mean, you fought Boss Roots in there. So many stars came out of Pancras. It was a little bit of a different rule set than folks are used to with MMA now. No closed fists, open hand.
Well, you technically could hit the body with a closed fist.
Okay, yeah, explain to people.
It was in the rules.
Yeah,
technically it was in the rules that you could punch the body. So that's why every once in a while you see someone sock a dude in the gut or hit him in the shoulder or attack him in that way. But it was wrestling, it was professional wrestling.
Yeah.
So the goal was not to beat up your opponent.
Sure.
The goal was to perform and have an enjoyable performance. So there was a lot of gentleman's rules.
And that's what I want to kind of tie in with you being the chairman for Shoot Pro Wrestling. A lot of folks don't know the history of MMA coming out of Japan. One of my old coaches, one of my dear friends, we did a book together many years ago, was Eric Paulson.
Oh yeah, Eric, he dated my sister.
Oh, did he?
Not mad at you, brother.
And Eric came out of Shuto. And Shuto actually predated UFC. He was the first American champion in Shuto. And Shuto's founder was Satoru Sayama, Tiger Mask, professional wrestler. You had, and that's what I wanted to ask you, because you're there in the early days of Pancras. Pancras came out of an organization called UWFI, which was professional wrestling, but it was much closer style. We were talking in the last podcast with Wade about Dan Severn, because he coached opposite in the NCAA finals. He coached Noel Lobin when Noel got the upset win over Dan in the finals. And Dan came out of UWFI into the UFC. But the difference was that Funaki and Suzuki wanted to have it be 100% legitimate, 100% shoot. Hence the name, Shoot Pro Wrestling. So your brother Ken started first, and as I understand it, there's the gentleman here that's coaching, Joe Malenko, who the fans will know. His brother Dean Malenko showed Ken a tape of the UWFI, and then he went to UWFI and then to Pancras. How did he bring you into the organization? Because I don't even know that myself.
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good question. Well, I was technically in prison when the whole thing started, so I was doing something else with my life. But Ken and I shared the same dad, Bob Shamrock. He adopted us both, and we were both in the group home. And so even though I screwed up my life and went to prison, he continued to counsel me, mentor me, and encourage me to develop my body, my mind, and my spirit. And he would come and visit me and say, "Oh, this new thing started. It's called the UFC." I'd be like, "What is that?" And we don't have TV. You don't watch. We couldn't see it happening because it wasn't on television. So I was informed of all these progressions. Like, hey, now it's pro wrestling, but now it's stiff pro wrestling, and now we're going to try this. And then so the fascinating part was when I got into fighting, I had no idea what fighting was about. I knew what professional wrestling was because I was a fan of professional wrestling. I watched it, Hulk Hogan era. I was, young kid consuming this and seeing the performances. So when my dad was telling me, they're doing it for real now. They're fighting it. Like all this stuff, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like, I didn't realize it was actually a thing until I got out. And then I tried out for the Lions Den, and then I became a fighter. It was like, day one, I was a professional fighter. But Pancras had such an advanced mindset. Like they had already gone through the professional wrestling area. They'd already gone through they'd already gone through all these different phases. And so what they were trying to do was get the realest combative wrestling you could get, like as real as you can get. And we go to the gentleman's rules. Like you wouldn't break a dude's leg if you had him in a good hold, because you got to fight 6 weeks later. It doesn't make sense, because his teammate's going to break your leg. Because why would you do that? Because we're all trying to perform. So they were trying to find that new model where you could perform all the time, have great, exciting, engaging performances, but not really get banged up.
And they used the rope breaks, right?
Yeah, rope breaks. They were like magic.
Yeah.
Because if you understood the game, you could get someone to expend a lot of energy on something.
Yeah.
And so you could, you could tease them into, applying all this energy, and then you just grab the rope. Just minus 1 point, and you get back up and you start clubbing the guy. So it was a real psychological game. It took me a while to get, to kind of get a hold of. Because Japanese knew what they were doing. They'd be like, yeah, pull on my leg, pull on my leg. Like 30 seconds later, they would grab the rope, right? And you're all tired from pulling on the leg. So yeah, the gamesmanship of it was really fascinating.
Yeah, so Shoot Pro Wrestling, this weekend we have the tournaments on the mat. We have the under 80 kilogram and over 80 kilogram, and then the wild one, the tag team. But in the events we've done in the past with Shoot Pro, the ones we did in Denver, were all in the ring. And we've had rope breaks. So similar to the Pancras, the pro wrestling rules. And I'll tell you, just like Frank said, when you're watching this thing, guys are expending tremendous energy to get a takedown, or they're hooking a lock and they're working it hard, and then all you do is grab the ropes. And he's expended all that energy, so it adds a whole nother level of psychology to it, to how you compete, to how you perform. So Shoot Pro Wrestling, we should tell fans, we had an event in South Dakota with my dear friend Pat Milicic with his MMA promotion, and that event was Higgins versus Auk in the cage, and that was our cage match. So it was on an MMA show, and we're gonna go back there and have the rematch with those guys. Brandon Riggins, I recruited him. He wrestled at my alma mater. He actually was coached by a gentleman that I coached, Charlie Vlado, and he did great, and he won. He made us proud, but it was very close, and we feel like Blade Hawk deserves a rematch, but that's gonna be in the cage. So in the cage, obviously, there's no rope breaks. So what we bring to you with the Shoot Pro Wrestling is we bring you so much excitement because it's always different. Whenever you're watching UFC, it's always the same. With us, it's different. We've got the tag teams. We're going to do an Iron Man match. Check this out, everybody.
Yes.
We're going to do Iron Man. 60 minutes, most falls wins. Just imagine that. Just imagine. It's a different type of athlete.
There's some Broadways out there. They used to call it back in the day. The old Ric Flair 60-minute Broadway.
Oh, yeah. And we're not and this is all shooters. Everybody's coming from the amateur wrestling ranks. We've got some all-American wrestlers competing tomorrow, coming from the MMA cage. Shoot Pro Wrestling is, man, I'm so excited. And I'm so excited to have our new chairman, the legend himself, Frank Shamrock. This is, man, we say that we're going back to the future with Shoot Pro Wrestling. Right, Hollywood?
That's right. And some of the greats that has been in the sport, Frank has been in the ring with them, the cage, however you want to look at it. Phil Baroini, you fought Phil Baroini.
I did.
A dear friend of mine, Phil Baroini, is a pretty wacky individual.
And the King and I have discussed his current living conditions, which are not so great at the moment.
I think we switched places.
What was it like being in the ring with Phil?
I knew Phil from before.
Right.
You know, he's a wrestling guy, and when I would teach on the East Coast, like I would teach in New Jersey, and I was always traveling and teaching and trying to share this knowledge. And he would sneak into seminars, and I'd see him sitting in the back, like taking notes, and then he'd come up and ask these really good questions.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, and I would, I kept seeing him. I'm like, well, I know you didn't pay, but how'd you get in? And he'd be like, well, I got this question about this thing, and he was really engaging with his quest for knowledge. So I knew him from that standpoint, and then I knew his persona, right? He started Dave Monet, like he did some things that made people grab attention. He was capturing attention.
Right.
And so, yeah, when it came to do that fight, I was like, man, I need the perfect opponent. Like I need the guy. And all the other guys I fought, a lot of times I have to be the bad guy, just because they don't want to, or they don't have the skill set, or they're not comfortable presenting themselves in that way. So a lot of times I take the bag and I run out and I'm the bad guy. But he was a built-in perfect bad guy. Like literally East Coast, West Coast, like all anti everything I was. And then he performed. I mean, he hit hard, he fought hard. Still, to this day, the hardest man I have ever punched, more than once. Like I smoked him like 3 times with all of my power from knuckle to toe, and I was like, there's no way this guy can still be standing. And he was still standing.
That's a good question to piggyback on that. Who was the toughest guy you'd ever been in the ring with, in a sense that like you were giving him some of your best work and it just didn't seem to phase him?
Well, the toughest guy, I mean, Phil was tough, but the other thing with Phil was I'd blown out my left knee. Like ACL, MCL, PCL, I was in an electric wheelchair up until a week and a half before the match.
Right.
And so I could literally barely move. And my original strategy, I was going to take him down and choke him out. Like I was going to make it a 3-minute match,
right.
And a little bit of this, and then I was going to just put him to sleep because I knew what his real skill set was.
Right.
But then once I blew my knee out, I was like, dude, I can't even bend down. And so it just changed the whole dynamics of it. But it worked out to be a great fight because it forced me to play his game. And then that became the entertaining side of it.
Right.
Like, who can take more? Like, what's going on here? Phil actually hit me more than anybody's ever hit me.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't move, and I was somewhat immobile. But the toughest guy I did ever fight was Enson Inoue.
Enson Inoue,
yeah. Enson Inoue in Valetudo, Japan. Was it 97, 98? It was actually the qualifier match. The person who won that match would then fight Kevin Jackson in the UFC for the first middleweight championship. And so, he was 20, 25 pounds heavier than me, but he had this aggression because he knew how to fight. He fought on the streets. I wasn't a street fighter. I'm like a nice guy. I'm like, no, we don't need to do that. Let's figure this out. But he was a real tough guy. Yeah. And facing that, feeling that, man, he socked me some really good times. That time he mounted me, he's like elbowing my head, and I'm like, oh, this is horrible.
I think, was it your last fight in UFC you fought Nick Diaz?
Well, I fought Diaz in Strikeforce.
Strikeforce.
Yeah,
okay.
My last fight with UFC would have been Tito Ortiz.
Okay, Tito Ortiz.
Yeah.
What about the Diaz? I mean, you hear a lot of, but Nate's still very active. Nick hadn't been in the ring in a while. How was fighting Nick? Because sometimes he don't have a problem playing the bad guy role either.
Yeah, he's a great bad guy. And the best part is, I mean, I've known those kids since they were 12, 13 years old.
Right.
Stockton
little
boys.
kids, right?
Yeah.
They're like ragged kids, they would come to jiu-jitsu. And I'd be like,
209.
yeah, so
Now,
I watched them,
I wanted to ask you,
raise.
Geographically, the original Lions Den was out there in California, right?
Yeah.
So they're the Stockton boys. Did they come train at the Lions Den, or they weren't in that time frame?
They were just around the corner.
Yeah,
They're Stockton and Lodi
Yeah.
were 30, 40 miles apart. Like
Yeah.
It wasn't a big distance, but vastly different communities. Like Stockton was inner city, kind
Yeah.
of rough and tumble. We were out in the country with the farmers. And it was like just a whole different thing. The unique thing about the Lions Den at that time is, we were a closed gym. You couldn't get in. You can't walk in.
Yeah.
You can't knock on the door. There's no sign. You had to be invited. There's like a whole process for you to get inside of there just to get an ass kicking. So, the Most people never knew it even existed.
And at that time, too, just for the fans know, now there's gyms all over the place.
Yeah.
At that time, there weren't many. You had Militich Fighting Systems, you had the Lion's Den, and not many other places. You know, to
No, we'd
go
have guys show up from Canada, Europe, all over the world with a suitcase, live on the floor, and just try to make it. Because it was the only one of the only places where you could, or where it was happening, or where it was, moving forward.
I did have a question, and sometimes you read things online. Some people put anything online nowadays. So I wanted to ask you this. There was something said, were you helping Ken do some work with the gyms? And there was a conversation between you two, per what I read online. I want to make that clear. That's where I'm getting it from. I'm not saying I have an inside source. That he told you to not worry about taking fighting too seriously because you'd never be a world champion. Did he tell you
He
that?
did say that, yeah. As did my adopted father.
And what kind of fire did that put in you, brother? Because, I mean, obviously, proved him wrong, but I mean.
Yeah.
Well, I think I came from a different space, right? Like at that time, the only requirement was that you were just tough as nails and you didn't quit. Skill wasn't a thing because we could teach you the skills.
Right.
We could show you how to fight because nobody really knew how to fight around the world. It wasn't just the knowledge wasn't there yet, and so you just had to be tough.
Yeah.
So these guys who came in were the toughest dudes you've ever seen in your life. They were the manliest, gnarliest, most awesome, ass-kicking dudes you've ever seen. I'm not that guy. I'm like a normal guy. I'm like, I don't know, that hurts. That makes me feel uncomfortable. Like, I want to talk about that. So I didn't have that angry, hard, and what was considered at the time a tough guy personality.
And you were always in great shape, but Ken had that big.
Yeah, he was
jacked,
legit crazy strong, crazy, and he'd street fight. He would bare knuckle fight behind the bars. Like, he was a street fighter guy, and I wasn't that guy. I fought in prison because you have to, or you're gonna die, right? So I fought on the streets because you have to, or you're gonna die. But I wasn't out looking for it.
You were
I wasn't
more technical.
pursuing it. Yeah, I wasn't like, oh, let's go get in the fight. I was like, no, let's get away from the fight.
No,
So what Ken saw in me, and what my dad saw in me, is, he's soft.
Yeah.
Like, he's nice. Like, we can't put him out there. And I think they were doing it from a place of love. I don't think they were trying to be, untoward. I just think they were like, wow, he's really smart, he's really nice, he's a really good teacher.
Yeah.
He'd be great running our gyms.
Yeah.
I was like, but wait, I'm going to be a world champion. I got this,
But I remember as you were far more technical, because I remember
Yeah.
the Contenders series.
Oh, yeah.
When you submitted Dan Henderson. And what year was that? I'm trying to remember.
98, 90, was it what, 96? Might be
That was
96.
probably, yeah, and that was, and for the fans that don't remember Contenders, it was cage grappling. It was similar to what we're doing with
Yep.
Shoot Pro when we have our cage matches, except they didn't have the pin. We have the pin
Yeah.
and submission. Just to tell the fans why we're doing that, why are you guys doing the pin and submission? It's the pro wrestling rules, but also it forces the action.
Yeah.
When a guy gets on his back and he can't keep both blades down, he's got to keep moving. So it's for the fans' benefit as well. But man, I got to say that I remember that match you had because I remember coming from amateur wrestling, Kenny Monday was on that.
Oh, yeah.
and he got
Yep.
submitted, and I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
who
Matt Hume
submitted
got him.
Matt Hume got him. Yeah,
Hume
Matt
got
Hume
him
was
with
a
the arm
Pancras guy as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you fight Matt Hume in Pancras?
I never did. He was kind of a weight class below me.
Oh, yeah.
And then I went superstar quick, and then he kind of slowly stepped. He was a little bit slower in his progress, so we never lined up. But I always liked him. He's a great guy.
How would you rate the skill set of Funaki and Suzuki if they were to be in UFC? Because they were always in Japan. One of them fought Hickson.
Yep.
And it was a very close fight. I can't remember if that was Funaki or
Funaki
Suzuki.
did, yeah.
Funaki, that was
Yeah.
a really close fight. But they were the Japanese stars of that organization. And you and Ken coming in as American, and then Boss coming in as a Dutchman, right? So how would you rate those guys?
Their skill was 2 levels, 3 levels, 4 levels above anybody else I ever met. And it's because they did it their whole lives.
And they were Carl Gotch guys.
Yeah, by the time
Yeah.
we were training with them, they were 20 years into the game. Like they starting out as teen. They were the Diaz brothers. They started out as 12
Yeah.
years old, and now they're 30, and they just had such knowledge. They're just
Yeah.
beyond. And I traveled the world. I taught everybody. I wrestled with everybody. These guys were just of the next level. But the only thing that I would say hindered them, and you'll see it in the Hickson fight, is their base was pro wrestling.
Yeah.
It wasn't about smashing people. It wasn't
Yeah.
about, beating people down in that physical way that MMA is, or that, street fighting is.
It's all about the rules, right?
Right. And so so your psyche gets a little soft, because you're not fighting for your life. You're kind of, it's a game. We're doing this, we're doing that. So when you meet those guys that are like, yeah, well, I'm here to kill you and we're doing this thing for real, it's a challenge for a guy like that, where those guys, after 20 years, to shift and go, okay, we're going to be killers today and not performers. But right? The other guys, I'll kill you, and you're like, I'll perform.
And I remember that Hickson fight with Funaki was probably the closest fight I remember Hickson ever having, though. That was a very close fight.
Well, I mean, I love Hickson, but he never fought nobody.
No,
Like,
he never came.
He never fought anybody with any high level talent.
Yeah.
Funaki, God bless him at the time, was already old. And
the second time he fought Takada, it was really close.
Yeah.
And Takada wasn't really considered to be that great, and it was a really close fight. So yeah, I agree. I think, and that's kind of interesting. It's sort of maybe a little controversial, but I've done a lot of stuff, interviews with Art Davey. I love Art. He's a good friend.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And he came up with Orion, and Gracie, and that's how they started. But if you talk to Art Davey, I mean, he'll tell you, those early UFCs were sort of infomercials to promote the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
They had the trademark, they had the whole thing. And the reason why Hickson got so valuable and so popular is after Hoist won, he made this real simple comment to Japanese press. He said, oh, you're the best. And he goes, yeah, I'm good. My brother is 100 times better than me. And that one line made Hickson the god in Japan. Like, it was like the guy. It was amazing, the dynamic that it created.
And he kind of protected himself.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he was smart. I'd have done the same. I'd have been like, yep, don't need it.
Oh yeah. I got an interesting question. I think when you do this, it's ingrained in you. It's in your blood, and sometimes certain fighters. Some go out at the right time, some maybe stay a little bit too long. Some go out and then have the urge to come back, as you've seen Ken did come back and he fought Tito for a third time. I think Liddell stepped back in the ring not too long ago. Do you think it's because they miss it, or is it, obviously money's a big contributing factor for everything at the right amount. Oh, Hollywood will get in the ring, and I've never been in there a day in my life. But do you think it is some of just missing being in there, that feeling that you get, even though you probably shouldn't be in there, you just miss it? You have this in the professional wrestling world too. Guys that really shouldn't be in the ring for maybe even health reasons, they still want to get back in there. I think it's a mix between the money and the passion, but what do you think?
For me, it was all about the money.
Yeah.
That's why I never came back. Because I made enough money where I was like, good luck, team. Take my knowledge and gather on. Because it's violent. I don't know what everyone else was doing, but I trained my mind to be like those guys that were trying to kill everybody.
Yeah.
So I went from performance and we're going to entertain to I will kill every human being while I'm on my journey. And that's part of the thing, because that's what people wanted to see. They wanted to see me destroy people. They wanted to see me get it done quick. And so it took a mindset to go in that direction. Yeah, most of those guys, they just need the money. But here's the thing. If I needed money, I could go make $5 million tomorrow. I'll be like, yeah, I'll fight him. Like, let's go do this. Right. I'm old. I'm broken. I shouldn't be performing. I don't want to get punched in the head. Yeah. I don't want to get my nose. This nose cost me $20,000. I don't get my nose messed with. No. So, yeah. But the other thing is, and I watched Ken as a great example, my older brother. I watched him. When he didn't have money, but he was hurt, he still had to perform because he didn't have other revenue streams or skills or broadcast ability. Like, he didn't expand his talents. So knee goes out, you still got to fight, and that's not how you perform at the highest level. That's how you get hurt. That's how you get hurt worse. And so I was always teaching, I was always presenting, I was always creating other opportunities. So I didn't have to, perform not at my highest.
Right. And he dabbled a little bit in the WWE too. And back in the days when Vince was running things with an iron fist, that was kind of the old motto, is people didn't want to go out for injuries or anything like that, because if you went out, you didn't get paid, and you lost your luster as the star or the role. So people, a lot of times push through it hurt, and I'm assuming it's the same way in the the fighting. If you can't, like I said, if that's your only option, and you're not good. Not everybody's cut out to be a color commentator like me. So you got to kind of pick those guys carefully, because a bad commentator can turn you off from the sport altogether.
Kill the whole thing. Well, the only time I did fight seriously hurt, was when I fought Phil, but it wasn't because I needed the money. It's because I was launching my league on a new network, and we had massive distribution opportunity through CBS. So if I didn't show up, we weren't going to get to the end of the finish line, which was get this on national television where everyone could see it and enjoy it.
Right. We should
So
talk.
otherwise, I'd have been like, no, dude, I'm not coming to work today. I can't even stand up and walk. You know?
We should talk about that because that was a unique time because you had Elite XC on CBS.
Yep.
And then that rolled over into Strikeforce, right? And then UFC eventually ended up buying Strikeforce.
Yep.
And that was a time frame where you were, explain your role with that organization. You're a broadcaster, obviously.
Yep.
And you broadcasted with our gentleman here who's with Shoot Pro, who's going to be here, I believe, this weekend, my dear friend Pat Miletich. And did you have an ownership stake in that promotion as well?
Yeah, so what happened is after I fought Tito, I retired in '99. I retired to get out of my contract. And so from '99 on, I was a free agent, which broke all the industry mold. So then I could go around, hey, you want to do a show? And I could partner with people. Yep. So when you see me on the WEC, that's a partnership where I'm the executive producer of pay-per-view and the main event and the spokesman and the guy. I had like 5 different jobs. But that's what the sport needed, and I had the talent to go do it. And so in the UFC, that didn't exist. You were controlled, you follow the script, you do the thing, you show up, blah, blah, blah. So in that next phase, I got to expand all these different talents. I was like first 5 years, second 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, in that figured it all out, my buddy Scott comes along. He's like, man, I got this.
Scott Coker.
Yeah, I got this kickboxing brand, and I really want him to take a shot at MMA. And I go, bro, it's super expensive, and it's hard, and we got this other team, and they don't like this and that. And he goes, no, I'll do it. He's like, I'll write a check. And he's like, give me a number. I gave him a number. He showed up a few weeks later with a big old check, and I was like, let's do this. But for Strikeforce, I was the main event. I was the sports broadcaster, the brand consultant. I actually had a brand consulting contract with the company itself, where I would consult on the brand. Like, oh, this is what we should do. And then I was an equity owner. So I was vested in the value of this. Why I went and fought with a broken leg, like my leg not working. Otherwise, I'd never been like that. My coaches would have been like, it's not worth it.
And that was when you guys brought Kimbo in. And
CBS loved.
Your ratings now at that time, I would imagine your ratings were exceeding UFC's because you were on CBS.
Yeah, we had amazing numbers. They were just coming out of the sort of Spike TV era. Just kind of got that show, like they had just found their footing and were starting to ramp up. And that was part of CBS going, hey man, I love this. In fact, Kelly Call was the catalyst to that because he was a huge fan of mixed martial arts. So he was one of the top guys at CBS. Going, you don't understand, it's coming, and you don't understand, it's coming. So when it did come, it was fantastic. I mean, it was really powerful.
Because I remember that time period, and I remember Kimbo was winning, and it was Seth Petrozelli that beat Kimbo, and did that hurt the brand?
I remember he was supposed to fight my brother that night.
That's right, I forgot about that.
Got cut, and then Ken couldn't fight.
That's right, he was supposed to be against Shamrock, Kimbo Slice. Kimbo Slice.
And then the backstory was, they came in, we're all sitting here in our meeting with our suits on, they're like, Ken can't fight. If Kimbo doesn't fight, CBS doesn't want a show. So this is hours before the live event is supposed to, we're sitting in a room and they're like, so we need to figure this out. Everyone's going, and everyone's like, what the hell? And they go, I'll fight. And everyone goes, what the hell? I go, Kimbo's, he's not a good fighter. I'll even carry him. Like, I'll make him look good. Let's do this. Let's get this show done. So up until an hour before the live show started, I was getting my medicals done. They were going through the stuff. I'm like, I'll fight him. Like, why not? Like, he can't hurt me. I'm free Shamrock.
Sure. And it was funny. I remember when that happened because I was at a sports bar and I was living in South Carolina and I was watching that show with my fiance at the time. We're watching this thing, and everybody in the bar is a Kimbo Slice fan. They're not real MMA fans, but they're Kimbo Slice fans. And man, all of the air came out of the balloon, man, when Kimbo lost.
Well, everybody was big on his YouTube, his street fights. I mean, those things were legendary in the streets and the boatyards and the bottoms of gyms. I think it was that one guy he fought. They called him the Bear, and they had a brutal fight. And it lasted. I think probably went on damn near 30 minutes. And I mean, seeing those things on the ground, I think that just kind of took him to that next level.
Yeah, he was cult. He's kind of cult, social, famous in a time when it didn't really exist. Except for that.
And even you had a guy, Street Jesus, Masvidal. He fought on some of the undercards that they had in those background fights that Kimbo was a part of. So not the most normal way I would say you come into the business, but whatever gets you there. You just need that.
Well, it reminds me of like remember bum fights?
Yeah.
Remember how huge
Bum
that
fights were
was?
huge.
And it was the dumbest,
Yes.
this guy at bums
Yes.
fighting. But it's like it was like, great idea, like that's awesome. But I think that was the steam from it. But yeah, when Petrozelli hit him with that jab and he just fell over, we all just went, oh no.
Did that tank your ratings?
There it goes. It just killed him, but all this for Kimbo did this.
Yeah.
So we were riding on Kimbo.
Because a lot of people were watching.
Yeah,
the
we
NXT
were riding
just
on
to see
Kimbo.
Yeah.
He's the golden goose,
And
man.
that's
Yeah.
the issue when you have somebody like that and you do a last minute plug thinking that they're just going to walk over him, kind of like when Buster Douglas fought Tyson, Don King, and everybody thought he was just going to roll on over him to get to the Holyfield fight, and then boom, and then that throws a monkey wrench in.
Well, Kimbo and I were pretty good friends, and so this is what I heard from his manager. It may or may not be true. He was guaranteed the money,
Right. So
whether he fought or not.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when that happened, he's like, sweet. I think he was in the back smoking blunts, like enjoying life. And then they came back and like, listen, we have more money. And can you go back out? And so he did, to his detriment.
And when he went on Ultimate Fighter, and it was kind of his lack of wrestling was kind of exposed there. And
He's a street fighter.
Yeah,
He's a tough guy.
yeah, but he was that guy that would draw you the ratings.
Yeah.
He
He looked great. I mean, he was scary looking. He
It brought
fought hard.
brought
Like, he
people
was
to the sport that
fantastic.
maybe didn't really
Yeah.
give it a whole lot of look
He was a
because
good
they knew the
character.
Kimbo name.
Yeah, I honestly cried my eyes out when he died.
Yeah.
Because he was such a good guy. He was one of the only guys, two guys in the industry, Vitor Belfort and him. I don't know him. I walk into a room like this, and I go to meet them, and they go, "Oh my God, Mr. Shamrock, it's so nice to meet you. Meet my mom." He's one of two guys
Oh, yeah.
who he didn't want to talk. He didn't want to do any other stuff. He wanted me to meet his mom.
Oh, cool.
And then his mom, "Oh, it's so nice that I've heard about you." And I'm like, "Okay, this is a good guy. This is a good guy right here."
There's a great episode of that Dark Side of the Cage on Kimbo right now, and it shows his mom. His mom's like the star of the episode.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, sadly, some fans may not know, Kimbo passed away a few years ago.
Yeah. He had heart failure. He's waiting for a heart.
Was
He
that
wore
what
his
was
heart
it?
out.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
he wore his
yeah.
heart out. I mean, just how about the life he was living, fighting on the streets,
Yeah.
with the gangsters. I'm sure it wasn't good for his heart.
Miami, right?
And I went out with Kimbo a few times, and we went hard. So.
Well, Frank, man, we appreciate you sitting down with us. We're not going to keep the chairman any longer. We're going to let you get out there and run things the way you do, and we definitely appreciate you coming on the show, my friend. It's been an honor.
I appreciate you guys having me.
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah. Well, here's my statement as the chairman. This is going to be some of the most exciting, fun, and engaging entertainment through combat sports activities that you'll ever see. That I guarantee.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
All right.